Good morning and welcome to our live talk program. This is Lloyd Grubb here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, doing our live talk program covering current events on this year, Thursday Rise and Shine, and give God the glory. And today I'm looking at this topic. Israel as a system is still here with us. So Israel as a system is still here with us. So welcome again. Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, I thank you for your word in this day. I pray that you may bless us as we study together. May you be with us as we peruse these thoughts. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. So I'm looking at this topic again here, which is Israel as a system is still here with us. So Israel as a system is still here with us. So this is our process of meditation as I continue my theme, which is the possibilities for good or for bad that modernity has brought. And so we get back again to Daniel chapter 12, Daniel 12, verse 1. So in Daniel 12, verse 1, it reads onwards, it says, "And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book." So here is a very interesting thing. So the question then I like to ask: Israel as a system, is it still here with us? Not as you say the physical, geographical Israel, but Israel as spiritual Israel, which I've covered these concepts in the past. And this is important because when you read this text, one could say, who is Michael going to stand for? Who is Michael's people? And why there's going to be a time of trouble? Why it's going to be more troublesome than any other time in world history? So this is the question that I will peruse with you here because this is important because if depends on how you answer the question, who is Michael's people? And why there's going to be trouble. Because remember, how I always look at life is that there always been trouble. So if you go back to the dark ages, as I say, and you say, well, there's a time of trouble. Well, there was troublous time. There's war, famine, pestilence, natural disaster, plagues in the dark ages. The dark ages culminated the ultimate evil that was rained down on society was slavery. So you could say that's the ultimate, right? Just a systematic brutality of a development of sin for over 1,260 years. And when it came to an end, it came to it's a glad end. So if you look at it, there's been always trouble in this life. But what changes in the end of time? What did modernity bring us? Which is one of the things that came to an end, is that concept of slavery and other things. But yet we say we in last days and there's going to be troublesome time that we've never seen. So what triggers this troublesome time? And we would say it's in verse 1. Verse 1 tells you that God as a people. So this is what I'm going to focus with. So Israel is still here with us. But just like how there's Babylon, and Babylon, we say Babylon is spiritual Babylon. Well, also the narrative in Revelation is that Israel is still here. And in Daniel, Daniel said God's as a people. So the question is, who is God's people? And why is he standing, and why this aggressive action, in other words? He was going to do whatever he did in the dark ages, whatever he did in the dark ages of Israel, whatever I've done for any nation when it comes on to war, famine, pestilence, natural disaster. We're told that because of this action that is basically predicated or built upon Daniel 11, at the end, that Michael will stand. And when he stands, he will come with some whipping. And the whipping is going to be a whipping like never been before. So why? So I'll read the text again for you. And I want you to think about that. What is different in the end of time? What is different in what we call these modern times that never existed on the face of the planet? And this is what I'm going to show you here. Why I believe that says we in special times and we are part of that by God's grace. In Daniel chapter 12, again, verse 1, we read, "And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people." Whose people? Daniel people? Interesting. Children. Children mean offspring, right? "And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation." And even that was a nation, even to that same time. So at that time, there will be something because there's something happening to God's people. And then Michael said, I'm off to stand. Very important for us to note. Michael is standing because something is affecting God's people. So God's people of the people are Daniel's people. So who are Daniel's people? And notice it says here, and at that time thy people shall be delivered, everyone that shall be found written in the book. So that's an important caveat. It's those that are written in the book. What book? You see, that's a whole study in itself. And now in verse 2 it says here, and many that sleep in the dust shall dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and contempt, everlasting contempt. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as a star forever and ever. So notice here, it's not turning others to fear mongering and to panic and panic attack. It's turning people to righteousness. So very important. So notice here again, and it says, verse 4 says, but thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. So we say, well, in the last days, knowledge shall increase. Many shall run to and fro, travel will increase, knowledge shall increase, and so forth. So then there's something special going to happen at the last days that will make Michael, as I say, behave in a way that he has never behaved. And that's what the Bible predicts, why this extra aggression against somebody that's affecting God's people, or Daniel's people, thy people, Daniel. Who is Daniel's people? Notice in verse 8 it says now, and I heard, but I understood not. Then said I, O Lord, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? So there's some things transpire in between what we just read. And he says, what shall be the end? There's a lot of stuff going on there. What shall be the end of these things? So we're talking about the end of the world, which we believe we're living in the end times. Notice here, and he said, go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed again to the time of the end. So one cannot understand, because the mere fact you said Daniel's people, well, Daniel's people would be ones that reject Christ. So who are Daniel's people then? And his people who have their name written in the book. Well, who have their name in the book? So notice here, many shall be purified and made white and tried. But the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand. But the wise shall understand. So there's something that Daniel doesn't understand. And it's clear from the text what Daniel doesn't understand. And it's clear to, well, it's probably clear to my mind. I don't know if it's clear to his mind, because he said he don't understand. So the wicked though don't understand in the end time. There's something happening, and there's something happening to do with Daniel's people, to do with people who have their name written in a book. And they also says that they're going to lead many to righteousness and to the Lord, so to speak. They're going to be shining like the brightness of the firmament. They will be tried, they will be made white, and they'll be purified. So righteousness, right? So we understand this is the end time narrative that we get, that while everything is going on, while you have the war, famine, and pestilence happening in our society, and society causing war, famine, pestilence, with all the craziness that they do in the labs and stuff like that, with all the LGBTQIA plus people cutting off their their stuff, all this type of stuff that's going on. At the end of the day, Michael saying that there will be a people. My topic again is Israel as a system is still here with us, just like Babylon as a system is here with us. There's two systems in Revelation, and these two systems are referred to as, well, it could be Daniel's people, God's people, the 144,000, Israel, and then ultimately we have those who claim to be Israel, but they have this from the synagogue of Satan, and they're really Babylon, and the Bible describes them as Babylon. So two systems. So we obviously cover Babylon before that Babylon is here with us. Now we say the Jews, or the Jewish system, is still here with us. In Romans chapter 2, verse 28 and 29, it says, for he is not a Jew, which is one outwardly, neither is that circumcision which is outward in the flesh, but he is a Jew, which is one inwardly, and the circumcision is that of the heart, in the spirit, and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of God. So when we ask the question, if we were asking Paul as he wrote to the Romans, who's Daniel's people? Who are the children of that people? Who are the offspring of Abraham? We'll read it in a few minutes. While Paul will say, well, it's somebody that is Jewish and is an Israelite in the heart. Remember, Paul is writing this to Roman, which are we will be modern day Italians, and he's saying an Italian that is circumcised in the heart is Jewish, is truly a true Jew. Very fascinating, because then one would say what, and then later on, Paul deal with the idea of being grafted in. We're grafted in. If you ever see a tree being grafted, it's grafted in a different stock. It is he's just taking the fat from the root and the nutrients from the root. So we are told, we're giving quickly, don't want to spend too much time here, but giving quickly the answer. Who's thy people? Who the children? The children of the kingdom. Well, the children of the kingdom was supposed to be genetic Abraham's seed. But here, Paul says it is those that are spiritual. In other words, in behavior, character, belief, internally. Now, somebody would say, well, does that mean that there's no external manifestation of a person who is a Jew? No, obviously, because Christ says that first you clean the inside of the cup so that the outside gets clean. See, so a man thinketh, so is he. If you think and you're rational and you philosophize a certain way, then you are what you are. And it is true for something. You can see a person adapt a culture. And you say, how did they adapt that culture? Because they start to be around the culture and they start to mimic the people in the culture. And then after a while, they represent the culture till you could have somebody represent the system of a culture. And they definitely not genetic the culture. You could see that right now, probably in England. The head of England, politically, not in a monarchical way, not a monarchical leader, but a political leader, is Indian, but he's born in the system and he raised up in the system and he thinks like the system, so he can represent the system. Very clear. And he probably can be a better British person than a British person with genetics. And that's just the reality of life. That's our current events. So when you understand life, you understand who is a Jew. Well, it's one that thinks like a Jew and behave like a Jew and believe like a Jew, a true Jew. Well, who? Well, you would normally say Job would be classified as some of the righteous man in the Bible, and Daniel. Daniel would be that person. It is people like Daniel, Jeremiah, so forth, we will say that are the righteous men in the Bible. And if you follow their teaching, the question always in my mind is, if I was living a time of, if I was living the lifestyle I'm living now, and Joshua was living, or Moses was living, or Elijah or Elisha was living, where would I come in the story? You see, that's really how you start to get really what's happening here. And that becomes fascinating because when we deal with the end of time, there's flashes in the Bible, essence, instances where you see what a true Jew is. It doesn't happen all the time in the Bible. It's just there's some examples in the Bible, samples, because that's what it is. The Bible is a progressive development. You have first the blade, then the ear, then the full head of corn, and then there's reaping. We're told that the Pentecost was a sampling. What happens the last days is a multiplication of that. So when you look at that, that's how you start to get who is Daniel. Like, would you be able to ham it up, so to speak, and sit and talk and then you'll be like, your brother, your sister. See, that's when you understand who Michael is coming to, who's God's people. So what is a Jew who is one inwardly? So in the last days, I believe, so the question, part of the answer to the question is, what's different that the wicked don't understand but the righteous understand is that God has a people and God is coming back for his people. And that God's people are moving in a different direction to purify themselves, to make themselves white, to be tried and tested, and to prove that they are real, the genuine, that they are really gold. While the wicked are just there about their warmongering ways and trying to create crazy things in the lab and, all the kind of madness that they're doing. And you see them every day trying to mutilate themselves and, all that type of stuff. So this is the kind of concept that we're dealing with. So there's like two groups, there's Babylon and there's Israel. Babylon is doing what Babylon do, a bunch of confusion. And God's people is doing what God's people is doing. Malachi chapter 3, verse 16 through 18. Malachi chapter 3, verse 16 through 18. Notice here in Malachi chapter 3, verse 16 through 18, it says here, then they that fear the Lord spake often one to another. And the Lord hearkened and heard, and a book of remembrance was written before him for them that feared the Lord, and that thought upon his name. And they shall be mine, saith the Lord of hosts, in that day when I make up my jewels. And I will spare them, as a man spareth his own son that serveth him. Then shall ye return and discern between the righteous and the wicked, between him that serveth God and him that serveth him not. So this is where the problem is. As I say, one of the biggest doctrines that come out of modern churches is the doctrine of don't judge. And but the Lord says that we have to be discerning. Discerning isn't based upon facts and information and data and what people says. You go by what people say. If a person said they're rotten, then you just believe what they say. You don't deny it. So very powerful. So when he says, Michael, the Lord shall stand for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble because God's people are under threat, duress in the last days. Because as we know, the mark of the beast system and country is going after God's people. And then God has to stand up. And when God stands up, there'll be a time of trouble because he said, I will deliver mine because they're mine. They belong to me. And remember, in the flood story with Noah, in the story of Noah, there was 8 people in the ark. We're told, and I'll read it for you in a few minutes, we're told that there'll be 144,000. So we've never seen that type of experience or that type of thing throughout history. History never had it. The Dark Ages was an example of the Bible prophesying in sackcloth and ashes. Now we have that freedom to be crazy or to be righteous. And so we can, what modernity has done is made things different. There's things that we do and say and the way we live, lifestyle that we have, that you see a little instance of it throughout history, but you've never had it even happening in any grand scale. You know about Caleb and Joshua. They were the only ones that stick with Moses. It's just not, you don't get a lot of big numbers. You get very small sampling of 1, 2 people. There's Elijah, there's Elisha, and there's a few people that are righteous. Other than that, most people are just doing Baal worship and all kind of Ashtaroth and Chemosh and all kind of crazy worship. That's just the reality of the history of the world. Now we live in this time that there's lifestyle, the way we live in lifestyle-wise, as I say, rarely have ever been seen throughout history. Just our regular lifestyle becomes fascinating, talking about the righteous. So I'll read again, Malachi chapter 3, so important. Notice it says here, then they that fear the Lord spake often one to another. The Lord hearkened and heard it, and a book of remembrance was written before him for them that fear the Lord, and that thought upon his name. Notice here, and they shall be mine, says the Lord of hosts. Who shall be mine? Who's God's people? Who is Daniel's people? In that day when I make up my jewels. So we know in the end of time that the Lord will make up his jewels, especially Malachi. Malachi is a book that talks about Elijah, the coming of Elijah to prepare the way for the coming of the Lord. So we believe, as it says in Revelation 18 verse 1, that a message come and it prepares the people. We always say that message is righteousness by faith. In other words, you live righteously by faith. That's a preparation for God's people in the end of time. So when that message is going, Satan will rile up the mark of the beast society to go against God's people, and then Michael shall stand, because Michael's going to defend them. And notice here, and they shall be mine, said the Lord of hosts, in that day that they shall make up my jewel, because they're precious in the sight of the Lord. And I will spare them, as a man spared his own son that serveth him. So God's going to treat us like sons and daughters. And notice here, then shall ye return and discern between the righteous and the wicked. And that's when it's becoming clearer. The craziness going on in society. It's obvious that society is moving in a direction that you can see as you peruse the news. As I say, if you look at the news and you see 2 women are married and they're having a child, very fascinating stuff. And as you see, and you could have 2 men are married, let's say the other part, 2 men married, you've seen it in the news, and they're having a child. One of the men are pregnant. This is just fascinating stuff. This is what's going on. But while that's going on, because the wicked shall do wickedly, and then the wicked shall understand. They have their different agenda. We have a different agenda. We have an agenda that you can see that in Daniel chapter 1. the diet and lifestyle really was seen. You have instances, flashes in the Bible of Genesis chapter 1, verse 29. Lifestyle flashes, Daniel 10 times brighter than the magicians and the astrologers and the astronomers. I mean, the astronomers, they try to go to the moon. It's amazing. They spend so much money trying to see if they can live on Mars, just polluting the skies. But anyway, so this is the type of craziness that we see going on. It is amazing to see these people mutilating themselves and stuff like that. But that's what happened on the left side. But on the right side, there's God's people who, in belief, in behavior, in lifestyle, in love, in all this type of stuff, are being tried and being purified. And they move in a different direction. So, as a system, God has Israel is still here. Now, I might say this: the word system means a set of things, like 4 or 5 things. It could be 2, 3, whatever. No, it could be. It can be. It could be 3, probably, or 4. Normally, multiple things that make up one thing, and it does one thing. It coexists, or it functions with multiple things. And that's what a system is, right? So you say a system, you could have 3, 4, 5, and then you put them together and it functions as one thing. It's a system. So Israel as a system is still in existence, just not Israel as a system in a sense of the madness going on over there in the Middle East. They operate as a system, all right, but to me, they're part of the end time narrative of the wicked. But God is a people, and God is a people that does his thing. So let's read Revelation chapter 14, verse 1. Revelation 14, verse 1 onward to 12. Notice here, God describing his people. Who are God that these people that the Lord will stand for? Michael will stand in the last days. Notice in Revelation chapter 14, verse 1. It says, "And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on Mount Zion, and with him was 144,000, having his father's name written in their foreheads." So, important to note, our focus is Revelation 14. The wicked focus, and those who are confused in the church, their focus in Revelation 13. Revelation 14 has flashes or talks about who are these people and what did they overcome, and what did they warn against, and what is the threat that they face in the end of time. Revelation 13 describes the wicked people and what they're doing. It's this war, famine, pestilence, and killing the righteous, and all this wickedness. So we find these 2 chapters back to back, and Revelation is written like that. It's what somebody described it as what they call a chiastic structure or something like that. But Revelation goes like an oscillation, up and down, wicked, righteous, wicked, righteous. You get Revelation 17, you get Revelation 18. There's a message come to revelate because of Revelation 17. I don't know if you understand why that's important, but it's important. Why is this important? Because our focal point as the righteous, our day-to-day focal point, not that saying we're not familiar with us as a two men are married and one of them get pregnant. We're familiar with that. And that there's a drug epidemic and stuff like that. If you listen to me, well familiar with that. But from a day-to-day life, when I go through my day, my focal point, so to speak, is in Revelation 14, not 13. Because Revelation 14 is just telling me what's going on outside my head and outside the walls of my house, what the wicked are doing. So I have to be aware of that. But at the end of the day, when we deal with ourselves and our family and our church members and stuff, we're trying to deal in righteousness. So we're trying to clean up our lives. We are more dealing with self and dealing with others. It's a different story. So that's important. So when we talk about Revelation 14, God's people are described in Revelation 14. When we talk about Revelation 13, the wicked people are described. So again, when we talk about the end of time, the Bible talks about 2 groups, Israel and Babylon, or the wicked and the righteous. And so hopefully by God's grace, we're in the righteous part of the Bible. So our focal point is not that we're not aware of what the wicked is doing. Our focal point is in how the Bible reads. The focal point of the Bible is righteousness. The Lord is a lover of righteousness. The Lord is a lover of beauty, symmetry, order, cleanliness. That's what we're focal point in our personal life, because that's how we end up being those who are being described in Revelation 14. Does that make sense? So most of the time, that's why if you come to me here, do talk about Revelation 13, but I don't emphasize it because it's not doing anything for me, not getting me where I need to get to in my personal life or in my ministry or teaching. I can spend more time teaching about how to be healthy than talk about some of the craziness that they do in the labs. In other words, I see on the news, as I say, two men getting married and one of them get pregnant, have a child. And I don't almost never read an article like that unless it has something to do with some chemical that they're giving them or hormones or whatever. I'm curious about that. But that's not my focal point. That's just something where I look at the news, I look at the headline, and say, "Oh, that's what's going on." It's like I'm like if I go on vacation, you don't go on vacation in the ghetto or in places where people are shooting at each other all day long. You go where you can enjoy yourself and you can experience nature. You can experience something that's gonna make you feel better when you finish. You see, so it's the same thing with life. But we are aware where the wicked people are overrunning the society. We are aware where there's hookers on the street and drug dealers, but we don't go there to enjoy ourselves because that would make sense, right? So it's the same thing with religion. We are aware and we're very aware of the wickedness, but our focal point is in Revelation 14, clarifying something there. So Revelation 14 says, "And I look and lo, a lamb stood on Mount Zion, and with him was 144,000, having the Father's name written in their foreheads." So one group have the mark of the beast in their forehead, that other group have the Father's name. So both groups gonna have something written in their foreheads. That's another thing that one has to be clear about. And I heard, because the forehead represent the frontal lobe. That's where we make our decision, our executive function comes from our frontal lobe. The front of our brain is where our forehead is where we make decision for right or wrong, good or evil. This is where we execute technical decisions and stuff. And I heard, and that's why when a person, I think of Alzheimer's or dementia, they start losing the frontal lobe control. But the stem of the head, the back of the head functions, so that's why they can still eat and, function. But the front part of their brain is gone. But many people lose their frontal lobe even before they get old. So notice that I heard a voice from heaven as the voice of many waters and as the voice of a great thunder. And I heard a voice of harpers harping with their harps. And they sung, as it were, a new song before the throne and before the four beasts and the elders. And no man could learn that song but 144,000, which were redeemed from the earth. So remember, they were redeemed from the earth. So these are human beings like you and myself. And by God's grace, we're part of that. These are they which were not defiled with women. So this was, moment I hear that, the first person I think about is Solomon. Solomon was defiled with women. And notice, for they are virgins. So that would take us back to take us forward to Revelation 17, or would take us backward to Eve, and she's given not a cup but a fruit to Adam. And it takes us back to when the Bible described we call it Babylon. Babylon is described as a female that is defiling the kings of the earth because they commit fornication. So it's the opposite. So the God as a people who is not drinking of the false doctrines and the drugs from the pharmaceutical company and being deluded. God as a people who are sober, who are diligent, who are walking in righteousness, who have dipped their robe in the blood of the Lamb, who have cleansed themselves from all defilement of the flesh and the filthiness of the flesh. They're not filthy dreamers and people who are confused with all kind of crazy doctrine, crazy belief. We know where we come up in the Bible, and by God's grace, we're in Revelation 14. And so they're not defiled with women. So you can see the picture of Lady Liberty, and she has that cup in her hand, and she's feeding the society all the opiates and all the fentanyl, and now they're feeding marijuana and crack, pure drugs. So you can see that. We're not taking anything from her and from whoever the daughters. Because remember, it's women, because there's a daughter and there's a mother. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. So that's very important for me, because as I observe every religion, The ultimate thing that is missing from a religion when a religion is fallen is character, morality, righteousness. Really, we could just summarize it by saying Jesus, a lambless religion, no sacrifice. They will sacrifice you, and they sacrifice the Palestinians and the Syrians and whoever they be sacrificing, whoever they find next, the Ukrainian, they're always sacrificing somebody. It's like some blood sacrifice they're doing somewhere around the world. But it's godless religion or a Christless religion. Just like a person can go to a Christless grave. They lived, but they never met Jesus or they rejected Christ. Any religion that rejects Christ is just wicked. And so if you look at that, they're redeemed from among men, being first fruit unto God and to the Lamb. So somebody say, now, Lloyd, how in the end of time can you have first fruit? First, we normally say in a sense of preeminence. Because as I said before, there's the lifestyle that we live and the walk that we have is, you see flashes of it in the Bible, but I've never really seen this fact that, for me, when I read this when I was younger, it was a high water mark, so to speak. It still is a high water mark because there's no guile. But I thought about it and said, can you live your life where you just don't lie? And I can testify to you that it is true. You can live a life where you just don't lie. And when I say no lie, not this high water mark is not you just don't lie. There's no guile. That means there's no shadow in what you're saying. Like to me, when you read one of the most powerful lies in the Bible that's so troubling, you can't really figure it out, is you shall not surely die. You'll be like, what is that? And when you want to see a wicked person, just watch a person that speaks in word salads. Like when they say, you be like, they talk, you be like, I don't know what they're saying. That's so confusing. Satan, speaking for Satan. It's we're talking about clarity of speech, not just the fact that you don't tell bold-faced lies. I'm talking about you don't talk things that I don't understand what you say. So I just tell you, I've just learned to say what you mean. I mean what you say. So notice here, we have not have an experience throughout history. We have a Daniel, thy people. Well, who's thy people? Well, like someone like Daniel. Daniel was excellent for decades. Daniel listen, even the prophets referred to him as, he said, even if Job or Daniel or whoever was in the land, the Lord will not deliver it. You'd be like, man, you can imagine a prophet talks about Daniel as if he's a high watermark. Like, Job, Enoch, there's a few. You wouldn't even put David and Solomon and those people in that rank. Thy people. Who thy people? Daniel. My man clean when it comes on to, when it comes on to his business dealing. Just think about a person works in the government that is clean as a whistle. Rarely do you find, that is such a weird concept that somebody works for the government and they do right. John the Baptist was the one calling for even the military people and the police, so to speak, to do the right thing and don't do bribes and stuff like that. But you don't find, that's a very difficult thing, even to preach it, because people get offended if you say the police should do right. People get very offended. Government official, oh man, creepy. Just taking bribes and just running the system and destroying their people for money. So when we look, we don't find this concept here. But here the Bible tells us something totally different. That there's a group of people that you could say they're like Daniel or like Job. Job is like the Bible says, Satan himself was concerned. Can you imagine Satan is concerned with you, right? Well, let's say it this way. God brought up Job. And I'm can't imagine if Job say, oh no, don't let him come at me. But he said, have you considered Job? Well, basically, what the problem is that Satan says, so let's see if I can get this off with you here now. Satan says about Job. God says about Job. Sorry. Satan, hey, listen, I've walked to and fro of the earth. I'm in charge of it. I have total control of this thing. And God says now, have you considered Job? Ouch. Ouch for Job. There's somebody there that don't follow you. Now, in the end of time, the question would be, or the issue here is there's 144,000 Jobs. Daniel in the land, never seen before in Herod's history. That's what's different in the end of time than any other time. And when you look at the lifestyle that we live, when we come on to Israel, from Genesis to Revelation, there's people that walk in truth and righteousness, beliefs, doctrines, whatever you call it. Not just believe it, but walk in it, that you've never really seen. You've seen instances, I'd say, with Job and Daniel and, some of the disciples and so forth. Even the disciples like Peter had struggled with racism. And yet the Bible tells us in the last days, Ellen G. White predicts that in the last days, God's people will view the matter of race and stuff like that very differently. And I believe we're there. We're not fully there, but we're there. These issues of is fascinating. It's fascinating. We live in a world where as I say, I was talking to I think it was a Jewish rabbi or something. He was a Jewish person. I don't remember. This wasn't a rabbi discussion, and I was saying to him, I'm vegan, and he said, oh, all the kosher law disappears when you become vegan because you don't have to deal with clean and unclean and stuff like that. It's just all plant based. Yeah, obviously, we still have to deal with chemicals and toxic stuff, but things just disappear when you start living a certain lifestyle. Many of the patriarchs of the Bible had multiple wives and stuff like that, and you could live a life where you could be happy just with one wife. It's amazing things that was difficult. That when you understand righteousness, you start living righteously and thinking righteously. It makes stuff disappear. It's just, like I said, just disappear. You don't have to deal with that. All of that just goes. It's fulfilling righteousness. So notice there that being first fruit in a sense of preeminence of God and of the Lamb. So you can see these people. God said, listen, I'm going to defend them. Jesus said, I'm going to stand. We never had this before. 3,000 people accepted at the day of Pentecost, and we're told it's going to be more powerful in the end of time. And I believe it. And I'm seeing signs that tell me that the Lord is doing stuff while the wicked is doing what they were doing, because there's two sets of prophecy in the Bible, the prophecy about the wicked and the prophecy about the righteous. And you find them run to and fro, as I say, Revelation 13, Revelation 14. Notice here, and in their mouths were found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God. No guile. So that's the high water mark that was said. Remember, God's promises or God's statements are enabling. God enables you that you can talk in a certain way and think in a certain way, that you don't waffle. Whatever you say, you mean, or you just don't say. Because that's one way, one tactic to not have guile or don't say. Sometimes just don't answer. Don't say nothing. Just as the Bible, as Paul says, be slow to speak and quick to listen. When you talk less or you don't answer things, like when you find out, say, that question will cause me to have to lie, then just not answer. Because then you have to lie, just don't give an answer. And if you give an answer, then willing to suffer the consequence of talking truth. So notice here, okay, and I saw so notice now, these people preach the three angel message. You see, the three angel message come from the 144,000. That's why we know that the message has to be repeated, hence Revelation 18. Because when it was preached, there was a lot of struggles going on in the church 100 and something years ago. The people weren't ready for really the message. So that's why the message that I know to you 2 days ago, that the message in Revelation 18 talks about merchant and stuff like that. There's a lot of things that happen that I think the people were like, they weren't. Think about it. When I grew up in a church, I grew up on the doctrinal religion. Righteousness was not part of the thing. You didn't get baptized into righteousness or Jesus. You got really baptized into doctrine. Even Jesus himself was a doctrine. That's the church that we grew up into. And that's the church many people are, even if they join a church now, they join in a doctrinal religion. It's not a religion of righteousness. It's a religion of the doctrines are explained in the context of this a teaching. If you accept that you're a Seventh Adventist or you're Israel, spiritual Israel, but nothing else. You go to church and worship on Saturday because it's the right day, not necessarily commemoration of creation, and that if you're Adventist or true Jew, you can't be an evolutionist, and you can't be a white supremacist, you can't oppress poor people, and none of that is taught. It is now this would sound strange probably to a person that I met 20, 30 years ago. Anybody I met 20, they'd be like, what are you talking about? They have no clue. They understand what righteousness is. But they're doctrinal religion. And most people are doctrinal religion. They study prophecy because it's the prophecy, not because it outlines what we're supposed to do and what we're supposed to preach. So now we go to verse 6, and it says here, and I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel. So the gospel that Daniel accepted, or Job accepted, or Moses accepted, or Jesus preached, or Paul preached, it's the same gospel. It's the same, the Lamb of God that taketh away the sins of the world. Take it away, every one of it, even to the point of cleaning us up so much that we don't even have guile in our mouth. We speak, we say what we mean and mean what we say. So preach the everlasting gospel unto them that dwell on the earth, to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people. That means all strata. Even if there's a people and they're not a nation because they're oppressed or whatever, there's a gospel to be preached to them. Same with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to him. For the hour of this judgment is come. That's now go back to Daniel and the book, and that there's people written in the book, or Malachi in the book, and there's people who written the book. So there's a judgment. Or Ezekiel, he talk about measure the temple, and they that dwell in the temple. Also Revelation talk about measure the temple, and they that dwell in the temple. And worship him that made the heaven and earth and sea and the fountains of water. So that's why you can't be an evolutionist. You have to be a creationist. You have to worship God in not only the right day, but worship God in the right for the right reason. He's a creator. So that's why we find people trying to be supremacists and trying to kill all these people because they want to be of the dominance and stuff like that. Christian can't be a part of that because our own purpose is to bless everybody and to lift up everybody and to be a friend of all men. How can you be a friend of all men at the same time trying to destroy people, to be the dominant? You know, the Christian is a humble person trying to lift up others and see others better than themselves, see others in need of grace and mercy and so forth. That's the gospel. So when you look right there, Revelation 14, verse 6 and 7, that's where we are. That's who we are. Can't be a Christian and work for certain governmental agency. It just cannot. You have to quit. You can't. You have to repent of that. And that's just the fact. And you can't be a Christian and, I'll just say, trying to do, buying prostitutes and doing drugs and being a pedophile and stuff. That's just against Christianity. There's nothing there. God's people can't be doing none of that stuff. We're sober. Notice here, and there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, the great city, and become the habitat. Sorry, it's all in my head. I'm reading from thought. Because she has made all the nation drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And so notice here, the second angel says, Babylon is fallen. So the Revelation 13 is brought to view because they understand that Babylon is in a fallen state. They're not in a fallen state, but Babylon is in a fallen state. And when I say the angels, we understand that means it's the people's, the message that comes from the people. Revelation 1 starts out by saying, the Lord gives the message to the angels, and the angels give it to the prophet John, and then John give the message to the people. So the message comes from the angel, it's signified by the angel. It's a message from God, from the throne of God, in other words, that the people preach, in other words. Not our message is God's message, but via the angels. And we repeat it. We are God's husbandmen. We have the talent that God gave us to bless the world. Anyhow, and the third angel followed, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image, and receive of the mark as his forehead and in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascended up forever and ever. And they have no rest day or night to worship the beast or his image, or whosoever receive the mark of his name. So we preach the message more so for warning. It's just a warning. That's all it is. It's a warning, a whipping, and beat down. Same warning. It's just like when I was here and when Pestilence 19 was running, and I was saying, listen, this is going to be a problem. The solution is a horrid solution that will backfire on society. And that's a fact. And one of the questions I had then that I seem like now they're figuring out is that the more you hit the system with that dangerous thing, is the more that system, it destroys the immune system. My question was from day one, if you instruct the immune system to work, what happens if you don't put that switch in it anymore? Does it turn on when there's a disease? And if you keep doing it, what will happen? I didn't answer for it. I was just wondering. I remember I would wonder about that live even here because I was very concerned because I was like, somebody's going to put a switch that turns on the immune system. Does the switch disappear? Yeah, those are questions I just didn't have the answer for. And so what we do is a warning. You can't stop nobody. I ain't here stopping nobody. I'm doing my focal point is myself and those that are around me. So we just here, we just talk about something and I move on. If I see something bad, I just warn. If you notice, I'll stay on the subject matter and I'll talk about it until it dies, and then I beat the horse to death, and then I move on from that horse, and then I can go, like, I'll I've almost just mentioned the pestilence 19, but not really talked about it in so many years or focus because I just move on because I conclude and then I move on after I figure out something and okay, next. I've changed subject because I'm still dealing with my personal life. Does that make sense? Matthew chapter 3, verse 9. So we warn, but our focal point is our mastery. We have a self mastery to do, we have ministry to do, and we have to focus on our ministry. And so we warn. Matthew chapter 3, verse 9. Matthew 3, verse 9 says, and think not to say within yourselves, we have Abraham to our father. For I say unto you, that God is able of these stones to raise up children unto Abraham. So that's important, right? God is able of these stones to raise up children unto Abraham. So if you go back now, I'm doing a miastic structure. If you go back to Daniel, and he says here, right there, it says, oh no, I'm not trying to do that. So it says, and at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince will stand for the children of thy people. All right. And at that time, such a time of trouble as it was a nation, and thy people shall be delivered. Okay. You see that? So when I come now to Matthew 3, 9, it says here, and think not that I says within yours, think not to say within yourselves. This is Christ talking to the children of Abraham, Abraham's children. We have Abraham to our father. For I say unto you that God is able of these stones to raise up children unto Abraham. How many sons or daughters of Abraham? And we sing when we were young that I'm one of them and so are you. So let's just get together and praise the Lord. So notice here, how many sons and daughters does Abraham have? Christ says that the Gentiles, of the Gentiles, this is why the Jews were mad because their probation was coming to a close. And they decided that to kill Christ because there's things Christ was saying that they didn't like. They absolutely ate. We believe Christ is Michael. So Michael says, I'll stand for thy children, the children of thy people. Who are the children of thy people? Well, Christ clarified. Christ says, well, I can raise up children of these stones. Some of you look at it and you say, oh, they're Gentiles. Christ said, I can raise up children of them. So when we talk about Israel is still here with us, we're talking about in reflection and in behavior. Israel, when you say, who is Israel? Well, those who would behave in such a way and follow the lamb wheresoever it's going. Job, Jacob, so forth. That's it. Jacob is Israel, an overcomer. So Israel is still with us. In lifestyle and practice and worship, we fulfill Israel than even these generations of people say they're Israel throughout history. It's fascinating. In lifestyle and worship, in the day we worship, the way we eat, the way we sleep, the way we dress, the way we walk, the way we talk, it is Israel in character. Israel is still here. And that God says in the last days, he will raise up a people that would be Israel. That you could say, if you are looking at Israel, like Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, if you're looking at Job, you're looking at Moses, you're looking at Daniel, you're looking at David, Solomon, at their zenith, you'll say, wow, I'm looking at Israel. These people follow Israel more than many times Israel. And that's the important thing in the last days. To me, that's what's different in the last days. That God as a people name Israel, but not blood lineage Israel. There's people, I've met people who they call themselves like Hebrew Israelites and stuff like that. And they claim some other way. I just simply view it as more to do with in lifestyle, in belief. We other than the we follow everything in the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, except we don't do the sacrificial system because oblation, sacrifice and oblation ceased when Christ died. He's the ultimate sacrifice. Other than that, we follow everything that a Jew is supposed to follow. In dress, in diet, in cleanliness. We don't. If we eat meat, we don't eat pork. No unclean animals. We, in dress, we're supposed to be modest in dress. In finance, we're supposed to do better in finance than any other group of people on the face of the planet while we're taking care of our health, while we're all over the place and succeeding. So I'll read it again. And think not to say within yourself, we have Abraham as our father. Christ still would speak to the Jews this way. For I say unto you that God is able of these stones to raise up children unto Abraham. Hebrews chapter 8, verse 7 through 10. Hebrews 8, verse 7 through 10. For if that first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for the second. For finding fault with them, he said, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the days when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith the Lord. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws in their mind and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a God, and they shall be my people. So here we find that is when the law of God is in your mind and in your heart, both intellectually and emotionally, from the frontal lobe to the emotional experience. One has the law. One has an emotional connection to the law. One is excited about the diet and lifestyle. One is excited about the worship, not just intellectually. You see, a doctrinal religion is just basically facts and figures. An emotional religion also is just emotion. You're excited about something. When you combine both things, and has to do with the law of God from Genesis to Revelation, do unto others as you like them to do unto you. That's an emotional plus an intellectual thought. And God has a people. And in the last days, this is the difference between. As I say, in Noah, it was 8 people in the ark. In the time of Moses, it was Caleb and Joshua. And they had health. They lived healthier than the average person. Their strength was there, but it was not a lot of people. In the time of Christ, it was 120 in the upper room. 3.5 years of preaching, 120 in the upper room. That's massive. Because as I say, if I had 120 people like what's in the upper room, that would be powerful. So if I had 12 people, 24, any group of those 12, 24, 60, whatever it is, you do times, and you get to that number, that's a lot of righteous people. Remember, we are told that there could be a church of 100 and not 1 in 20, not 1 in 100 is saved. So you could look at a church and say, oh, there's 100 people in the church. And we understand that for the most part, not even one going to be saved. If 5 saved, that would be a lot. You see, but the Bible tells us in the last days, there's going to be 144,000. Total different experience and understanding. Galatians 3, verse 29. Galatians 3, verse 29. And if ye be Christ, then ye are Abraham's seed, and here according to the promise. So if you walk with Jesus Christ, then you're here according to the promise. You're Abraham's seed. God as a people, Israel as a system is there, intellectually and emotionally. We're not just a doctrinal religion or just we talk about prophecy. It's all of it. It's in diet, lifestyle, finance, everything. We're the head and not the tail. In Numbers chapter 23, verse 8 and 9, love this text. Such a beautiful text. It says, Numbers 23, verse 8 and 9, it says, how shall I curse whom God had not cursed? And how shall I defy whom the Lord had not defied? So the mark of the beast in the end of time is basically is the wicked people try to defy who God has not defied and curse who God has not cursed. How are you going to curse the 144,000? You're supposed to embrace righteousness, embrace Israel, true Israel, not Israel that is, but spiritual Israel, not Israel as physical Israel. That's a death machine, the death cult, death and destruction and war, famine, pestilence upon people. We're not part of that. We're true Israel in the sense of character and belief. Notice here, for from the top of the rocks I see him, and from the hills I behold him. Lo, the people shall dwell alone, and shall not be reckoned among the nations. So, yeah, we live in a nation, in many nations, but we are not nationalists. We're not Christians nationalists. We're not whatever nationalists. God's people always lived in a nation, but they were not nationalists. And that's why there's a lot of people who claiming to be Christians, but they're really Christian nationalists. And they're there because they're there, I don't know, they're fighting for the nation. They're trying to save the nation. It's like, no, you save people in the nation. We have a message to preach to all kingdom, tribe, tongue, and people to come out of them and become part of God's people, not to be reckoned among the nations. So these texts are in the Bible, but you rarely see people live like that. Most people I've ever dealt with that were Christians that I worship with, they were Christian nationalists, or they're just doctrinal Christians. They didn't have nothing to do with righteousness and stuff like that. They don't even like themselves. So, you always think about this where Christ says you have to love others as you love yourself. A lot of people don't love themselves. so how they going to love others as love themselves? As I said, there's many people I've met that the way they treat themselves, I do not want them to treat me. I don't want them to take care of me because they would treat me horrible because they treat themselves horrible. Most people, I wouldn't want them to feed me because they feed themselves terrible. The food they eat is garbage. Why would I want that type of food? Is just destroying their lifestyle. We're supposed to eat food that's going to renew our youth. So our youth shall soar like the eagles. There's most people what they eat and they shouldn't feed it to the dogs, much less to feed it to themselves. And so when we talk about righteousness, we're talking about the entire process. Spiritually, normally when people talk about spiritually, what they mean is that the Lord's just going to work a miracle on us. But true righteousness is internal conversion. You start to love truth. You start to love the results of truth. You start to be attracted to righteousness and to goodness and to mercy and love. And then you practice that in your hands. But it's internal conversion that becomes external. But as I say, over the years, I kept on coming upon people that I realized they had a doctrinal religion. In some religion, it's a creed-based religion. You accept these creeds and you become part of that church. And then in other religion, it's doctrines. You accept these doctrines and you're not part of the church. Nothing to do with righteousness. Nothing to do with how you take care of your finance, how you take care of your health, how you take care of those are less fortunate. That's why you look in the societies that are evolutionists and they have big problem with pedophilia, big problem with mass murders, big problem with suicide, on and on you go, because they live in an environment where everybody's like trying to be number one. You never have a friend that is competitive. Never. You can never have a friend that is competitive because a friend is somebody that's not supposed to be competitive. They try to look out for your best interest. I'll read this to close. Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 26 through 29. There is none like unto the God of Jeshurun, who rideth upon the heaven in thy help, and in his excellence on the sky. The eternal God is thy refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. And he shall thrust out the enemy before thee, and shall say, destroy them. Israel then shall dwell in safety alone. The fountain of Jacob shall be upon the land of corn and wine. Also his heaven shall drop down dew. Happy art thou, O Israel, who is like unto thee, O people saved by the Lord, the shield of thy help, and who is the sword of thy excellency. And thine enemies shall be found liars unto thee, and thou shalt tread upon their high places. So we are called God's people. Not God's people in the sense of a nationalistic movement, but in the sense of people who live by the word, every word that proceeded out of the mouth of God. We walk in the righteousness that, as I say, rarely have been seen throughout history. There's things that we practice and we do and we believe, and we preach that only flashes of it you've seen in the story of Daniel, Jacob, in the story of Caleb and Joshua. The lifestyle that we live is not seen even in the dark ages, rarely, flashes of it. And the move that we move, that's how we move and have our being in this life. So again, the thought I will finish tomorrow when I do tomorrow's live talk. Until then, we'll pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, I thank you, dear Lord, for your love towards us and the blessings of knowing thee, the only true God. Pray thee may be with us, dear Lord, as we walk humbly before thee. And we seek to understand and to serve thee and to bless our fellow human being. May you be with us, we pray, to all these things for Christ's sake. Amen. Well, thanks for being with me here on Revive Reform Radio. Looking forward to talking to you again live tomorrow, where we should talk about religion. Until then, I pray that you may continue to walk with the King.